Hi, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. Hello, and thank you for joining us this evening. My name is Renee, and I welcome you to the Fayetteville Public Library. Also, welcome to those of you who are going to be watching online as well. If you would please take a moment to share your thoughts on the feedback forms that are out on the seats. Your feedback helps us plan for future events. It is my pleasure to introduce Cole Fennell today. Rock climbing is more than a sport or hobby for Cole. He's worked and climbed all over the country, but after returning to Fayetteville in 2007, Cole developed his first climbing guidebook for Arkansas. His latest release is Rock Climbing Arkansas Western Crags. Tonight, he'll be talking about climbing and discussing his guidebooks. Copies of the books are available for sale and signing after the presentation. Cole, thank you for being here.
Will, are we? Here we go. Okay, thank you all for coming. I had no idea how many people were going to come to this. When we set this up, this was like a year ago, or started talking about this a year ago, and I didn't even know the book was going to be coming out. Anybody who knows me or knows anybody who's worked on guidebooks, they're like, yeah, it'll be out like in 6 months, and it comes out like 3 years later. So I mean, this was just scheduled originally to like talk about rock climbing. It just turns out that it's been a good timing for the guidebook world here in terms of we got a guidebook coming out, and so I'm sure a lot of you may already have that. If not, we've got one here, or we've got some here for sale. But I really like talking about rock climbing. I really like talking about Arkansas rock climbing, so we're going to get into it here. First off, is everybody here a climber? Like, are there any people that are like, I'm trying to get into climbing, or I'm interested in climbing, but we got one? Okay, so I'm going to spend a little bit of time on like how to get into climbing, but I didn't know the demographic. I didn't know if we were going to have more like people who've climbed a lot versus people who haven't. So can everybody hear me? Okay. Will, do I need to talk into the mic for the live stream? Okay. 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 I talk pretty loud anyways. Okay. So here's kind of some bullet points of what we're going to do. I'm going to talk a little bit about like my background and why that's pertinent into how I got into writing guidebooks and things like that. I'm going to make the case that Arkansas is a world-class climbing destination, which I would not have been able to make 10 years ago. And then we're going to talk about how to get into climbing. So for our one non-climber here, we're going to go into that a little bit. Going to do a little bit of Arkansas climbing history. I could spend a lot of time on that, but it kind of is boring to most people, so we're just going to kind of glance over some important things there. And then the evolution of Arkansas climbing guidebooks. I have the very first Arkansas book ever, and we're going to have the first Arkansas climbing guidebook, at least that I know of ever, and I'm going to have this in the back if anybody wants to look at it later, but it's a really cool old book. But anybody who does look at it, it is so fragile. So if you like tear the cover off, I will never forgive you. But it's for Mount Magazine. So we're going to get into like the evolution, like how it started from that to like what we have now, the Western Crags book. And then we're going to talk about the Western Crags, the Rock Climbing Arkansas 3rd edition, and then we're going to do some questions if anybody has them. So we'll get started here. Okay, so I do have a real job. I am a chiropractor and a functional medicine doctor here in Fayetteville. We do a lot of regular chiropractic stuff and working with sports injuries and things like that, but we also do like a lot of chronic illness and working with those types of things. But I want to get that part out of the way quickly, so let's get into the fun stuff here. So I was born and raised in Fayetteville. I've lived in Colorado, and I've lived in Kansas City, which is not a climbing mecca, for anybody wondering. Climbed for about 20 plus years, and I've climbed all over the U.S., a lot in Canada, some in Mexico, and so we're just kind of going to go. This is a picture of me at Sam's Throne. Here's just some random stuff of like over the years of climbing and traveling, and I'll tell you why this is important. So this is these are both in Utah. This is Moonlight Buttress here on the left in Zion, pretty red faces. This is my friend Joe Larson, and some of y'all might know him, and that's me up there rock climbing. This is me climbing in Utah in Indian Creek. You probably, if you're all rock climbers, know what this is Yosemite Valley. This is Mecca for rock climbing. Picture, I took that in like 2015. This is funny. So this is climbing Yosemite. This is a route called Separate Reality. It's like a famous roof crack or whatever that a professional photographer happened to be there, and I just got a cool picture. I don't have that many cool pictures of me over the years. But this one's hilarious. Does anybody know who Bob Evans is? Or I think that's his name, the Tom Evans. Andrews, a couple nods. So there's a guy that used to sit, I think he's like retired now, but would sit in front of El Cap, which is this big guy on the left here, the one that Alex Honnold free soloed, made famous. he would sit there with a huge telephoto lens and take pictures of everybody on El Cap and then blog about it every day and like tell you, what's going on with this party is up to this pitch. And, so people could like follow before like cell phones were that great out there. You could like follow your friends like, oh, look, they're at pitch 17 today and tomorrow they'll top out. Anyways, this was from like 2015. And this is me and Andrew Childs, if anybody knows Andrew Childs, and Matt Dickut up here. And this is what Tom, I don't know if anybody can read that. This is hilarious. This is Tom talking here, or I think that's the name, Tom. This is the first of 2 teams I saw in the vicinity of the Hollow Flake. The leader was actually wearing a camo outfit. Not good, camo equals no picks. So it's like kind of making fun of my Arkansas roots. I'm up there wearing camo, and he was upset about it, but I thought that was pretty funny. We actually bailed early, and it was a terrible trip in terms of like failure, and that's about as high as we got, so I deserved the berating. We went back and did better next time. So I just went to Mexico for the first time to go climbing. This is El Potrero Chico. You guys have probably all heard about this. Actually looks okay. It's an iPhone photo, but this is a route called Sendero Luminoso here in the middle. And it's really cool. That means the shining path, and this is the moon. So we just happened to catch it. It was like 6:30, looked right outside our door, 6:30 in the morning. The moon was right over it, so you get the shining path there. Okay, so Potrero Chico, so that route I just showed you, the one that goes right up the middle here, so we spent some time climbing on that. Here's a picture of us on a portal edge. So you don't sleep on the route, but we brought a portal edge up to belay on because it's so steep. It's all hanging belay, so it's really uncomfortable. And this is just give you some perspective on like how small we were up there. So somebody took a video of that. You can hear the Mexican music in the background. If you haven't been to Potrero, it's awesome because it's like literally from where that guy took the video, just all it is campgrounds and Mexican restaurants. So within like 5 minutes of rappelling off a route, you could be drinking a margarita like immediately. It's pretty cool. But I want to point this part out too. You see this palm tree? Can you guys see my mouse? Yeah. That's a famous pitch called the palm tree pitch. And then here's my buddy Alan. So this is right after that. So like that's actually on the wall. Looking up. So anyways. Potrero is great. I recommend going. I just put this in here so we could see that I'm still an Arkansas boy wearing camo while I rock climb. Okay, so I showed you all that because none of this is, we're here to talk about Arkansas. We're not here to talk about all these other climbing areas that I've been to, which are really fun. But really, I showed you that just to talk about like why I really think Arkansas is a world-class climbing destination. I've climbed in a lot of places and climbed with a lot of people who've climbed in a lot of places. And, when I first started climbing in Arkansas, I don't think it was as good as it is now. We're going through this whole, like, explosion of new routes and all this new stuff getting developed. There's all this momentum, and it's really special. And so, when I used to travel and tell people I was from Arkansas, I'd be like, yeah, it's pretty cool. Like, if you're ever around, if you're driving to Kentucky, stop, and I'll show you around. It's pretty cool. But it's kind of now been like, no, you should come. Like, book a trip here, and it's awesome. And so I'm going to give you the reasons why I think that could... why I think Arkansas is actually a world-class climbing destination. So we're going to go over these individually here. But I think Arkansas is the best beginner to moderate climbing in the United States. And that's from my experience and from talking to others who have traveled all over the place. We've got a few things going on here that other places don't have. Generally, in my opinion, and the opinion of others, I suppose, the harder the climbing it gets, the more interesting it gets normally. You get like cleaner lines, you get like better quality rock, it's prettier typically. And in Arkansas, it's not always like that. We actually have a bunch of amazing moderate routes that are just beautiful and easy on the hands, and the rock is good. We got things here called chicken heads, which if you guys have climbed here a bunch, you see these little chicken heads, and these are more like dinner plates. These are more chicken heads. But you don't have those in other places. Where you do, like some places in Red Rocks, they're more fragile. Like you can just grab those things and pull them down to your waist, and it's straightforward, awesome, really easy climbing, and we have a ton of it. And so places like the Red, which are similar to Arkansas in the sense that they're sandstone crags, don't have that kind of easy climbing. So it's really funny to me. For a long time, I'd meet people from Kentucky here. I'm like, why are you climbing in Arkansas? They're like, well, we're here to climb 5.9s. I'm like, the 5.9s are better here. So anyways, I put these other areas of note. There's really good, easy rock climbing everywhere in Arkansas, in my opinion, but I put some here. There's some places that are interesting. And for all these Northwest Arkansas climbers, if you haven't been to the Jamestown Crag and you like Horseshoe Canyon, you're climbing, you're after that grade, that 5.8 to 5.10 range, the Jamestown is like as good as Horseshoe, like as good as the North 40. It's not as much stuff there, but in certain ways it's better rock and it doesn't get enough credit, honestly. It's just on the other side of the state. So if you're looking at that grade range, go check that place out. It's really neat. And then over the years, Arkansas, the more difficult rock climbing has improved as well. Okay, some of the best quality sandstone. So if you've traveled around and checked out sandstone around this country, Arkansas really does shape up. It does match those other places. This is a place called Ode Hollow here, which is in the new guidebook. That rock is as good as anything that I've touched in the new, which I consider the best rock in this country. So we have these little chunks of sandstone that I think are really rivaling these other places. Some good things that we have going on here is that the stone is really high friction but not sharp. And a lot of places when you travel, and not just sandstone, but other places, when you grab small holes, they hurt, which is not that much fun. They've got really good shape to them. Like everything here seems to be pretty ergonomic. It's like it's kind of the right how you want it. And things are clean here. You know, when you go through and walk a new cliff, there's not lichen and plants and stuff everywhere. Like, you see that in a lot of places. I mean, some of the north-facing stuff is, but generally pretty clean. And bomber, which you guys probably all know what that is, but if there's live streamers or for anyone who doesn't know what that is, it basically just means like really solid rock. It doesn't break a lot. And then we get some vibrant colors. We don't always get the vibrant colors, but when we do, we take pictures of them. Okay, one really unique thing that's going on here in Arkansas that, as far as I know, isn't happening to the as substantial in other places. We have this great community involvement. Andrew, do you want to say something about the Climbers Coalition later? Can I pin that on you? Okay. So the first organization here that I'm going to talk about is, and it's at the bottom, is the Arkansas Climbers Coalition. And so if you guys don't know what that is our local nonprofit that's here to help secure climbing areas and help promote climbing. And all these other people that I'm about to talk about, they're the ones that are kind of like helping all this stuff in the background. So if you aren't a member of the Climbers Coalition, you should join them. And I'm being a hypocrite because I haven't paid dues in a while and I need to. But you should, because they're doing some really, really important work. So Andrew is the vice president, and so we'll have him at the end maybe kind of stand up and say some stuff that they're doing and some plans that they have. Okay, if you lived in Arkansas for long, you know who the Walton family is. They've gotten really into mountain biking, and now they've gotten very into rock climbing, which is good for us because they have a lot of financial access. It's been really good for the outdoor scene here. So a lot of people may not know this. They actually bought Horseshoe Canyon Ranch last year. There's some rumors about that. Some people were upset that the Waltons bought it, but really just to set the record straight, Horseshoe Canyon was going to be sold to the Mormon Church and was going to be turned into a camp that we couldn't climb at. And so the Waltons actually saved it. So I just want to put that out there. So without them, we would not have maybe our greatest asset in Arkansas. They also purchased Fitzgerald. They also purchased Weber's Mountain. Those are two new crags in the Springdale area. If you haven't been there, it's like kind of our local Northwest Arkansas areas that are great. They've also sent out a bunch of grant money to help rock climbing in some other ways in Arkansas. The Arkansas State Parks, this is something that is kind of changing as we speak. The Access Fund and the Climbers Coalition has been in works with the state parks and trying to make the climbing management plan be more accessible to rock climbers. And a representative from the Access Fund said that they think now that Arkansas, what we're moving into, is the most climber-friendly management plan in the United States, which is pretty cool. So there's going to be a lot to come in the state parks here going forward. Hopefully, like places like Petit Jean, hopefully Magazine is going to get even more climbing, and that's really, really exciting. The city of North Little Rock, if you guys follow the Climbers Coalition at all, there's some stuff going on there right now. Burns Park, so like in North Little Rock, there's a really cool crag that's opening up. They're developing routes right now. City of Lincoln, if you live around here, Lake Lincoln, there's a bunch of community and government involvement here that I don't know that other places have. And the Natural Heritage Commission, that's where Dardanelle Rock is. Okay, this is actually my favorite thing about Arkansas, what I call the Arkansas climbing experience. So when I first wrote a guidebook to Arkansas, I was pretty young. I think I was 22 or something when it first came out. But I moved back to Arkansas. I was living in Colorado, and I came back to Arkansas, and I was really inspired to write a book, and we're going to get more into that in a minute. But really what I came back is, Horseshoe Canyon was being developed and growing, and I was like, Horseshoe's really cool, but like there's so much other stuff in Arkansas. So I'm going to write a book and get these people to go check out, see what's past the Ozark Cafe. No one ever drives past the Ozark Cafe. And then the book came out, and everybody's basically cut out the part that wasn't Horseshoe and threw it away, and they were like, nice Horseshoe guidebook. So people didn't really, my vision is starting to happen a little bit now, but people love Horseshoe Canyon, and they're just excited to have a color guidebook to it and stuff. Anyways, I just always think that really the experience of Arkansas is like getting out in the middle of nowhere, where it's, hello sir, where it's dirt roads, there's river crossings, there's no climbers anywhere, there's good rock, there's rednecks, I don't know, it's just kind of a funny experience that you really don't get elsewhere. I've toured around some people that have climbed all over the place that, very accomplished climbers, and they're like, you don't realize how special this is. Like you cannot go to areas this good where there's not climbers, you know? So anyways, the Arkansas experience, I think that's a really special thing. So if you haven't been to places like, you know, out to Prohibition or to any of the stuff in the Piney region, like to me, that's like what embodies the Arkansas experience. So this isn't, not everything is like this, but this is one of the dues you have to pay to go to Piney Bowl for those of you who haven't been here. This is a river crossing. It's not normally this bad. That footage, or that's not very clear in the picture, but you get the idea. You do not want to fall in. And that was actually Andrew in that video. So, but anyways, you know, not every crag has that, but I love that. I actually like the adventure of it. Sport climbing sometimes is not adventurous enough, so, you know, it's good to add a little, make it a little more challenging to get there. Okay. For our non-climber here, I've got a couple non-climbers now, and for our live stream non-climbers. So basically, if you're in Arkansas, and this doesn't just pertain to Arkansas, but the best ways to get into climbing is it's a climbing gym. When I started climbing, there was like very little access to gyms, but now like you can go in, the training's good. Every time I go to a gym, I get in trouble because I'm not doing it right. Like they're getting better all the time with how they're, you know, they're even making like old crusty climbers like myself. You have to like change their belay techniques, and things are getting safer and better. In Arkansas specifically, and I've listed a few climbing gyms there locally. In Arkansas specifically, we have a really good gym to crag experience, meaning what you experience in the gym is pretty similar to what you'll experience outside in terms of protection. So like it has that kind of a safe feeling, like the bolts are close together. It's just generally like a pretty safe feeling. Not every area, but there are some in Arkansas that are really good for that, and I listed those here. So Fitzgerald and Weber's Mountain, the two Springdale crags we talked about, Horseshoe Canyon Ranch, and there's a bunch of others too. And then there's some guide services, and specifically, Sam, where are you? Sam owns a guide service. He's awesome. His partner, Olivia, too, is a part of that. So if you guys are interested, he'll hang out in the back a little bit afterwards, and if anybody wants to talk to him about that, that's a great way to get into it. Okay, so Arkansas climbing history. I'm going to be pretty brief with this. Like I said, I do not want to bore anybody with this. I find this stuff really fascinating. I kind of come from like an old school mentality in climbing when I moved west and got really into the history of Yosemite in Colorado, and hung out with a bunch of old guys that made me kind of respect my elders and such. So I don't know that there's really an Arkansas climbing historian, but like if there is one, it might be me, just because I've looked for, I've tried to always call everybody and try to put it all together, and you know, it's not like there's a great history book for climbing. So there's obviously some errors in these things, and I think I might have found just recently a pretty big error I'm going to tell you about here in a minute. But anyways, I totally dork out about it. So if anybody knows of something I'm wrong here about, please point it out. Climbing, as far as I know, began in Arkansas in the 1970s. People were exploring Sam's Throne, Red Rock Point, some of the surrounding areas, and even like, you know, and I don't know when this started, but there's little crags around here people have kind of been exploring for a long time. Like there's a little crag in West Fork that no one goes to anymore. But so who knows exactly where it started, but those are kind of the bigger areas that people talked about, Sam's Throne, Red Rock Point being the main two. The two names that you hear of the most from them are Leroy Scharfenberg and Alf Carter. There was a rumor that Leroy Scharfenberg led Windy Armbuster, if you guys know what that is, like a scary 510 plus on gear at Sam's Throne in hiking boots, and that was unconfirmed. So that was history that was in the books prior to mine, and I had to talk to people that knew Leroy, and they're like, no, not a chance. That did not happen. Like even at his best with climbing shoes was not leading that. I was like, okay, so that was probably not true. But that was a good story. So around that time, many of the classic easier cracks and stuff were probably developed, not really any written history. So probably the most notable ascent from the 1970s that I know of, Instant Karma, which is a 11A, was established by Terry Andrews, a guy from Oklahoma. And that was pretty hard for the time in Arkansas, probably the hardest route in Arkansas at the time. Although there was some stuff at Rattlesnake Ridge that was starting to get developed this is part of the history that I think I'm going to be meeting with some older Arkansas climbers here soon to try to sort some of that out. But that was a big deal either way. Mount Magazine, if you guys haven't been there, it's a state park in central Arkansas. And they got the first route in 1979, this route called Mystery Meet, which if you've ever, next time you go to Mount Magazine, go look at Mystery Meet. And you're like, you walk this whole cliff line, and this is the first thing you climb. That's interesting. It's like this one star, like, you know, anyways. But apparently that was the first route climbed, and so that was 1979. 1980s, this is where climbing history gets a little more interesting in Arkansas. There's this whole thing going on versus Arkansas versus Missouri, this rivalry thing that I don't know kind of when it started or how it started, but there's like the Springfield contingent, Columbia people coming down from Missouri, And since there wasn't that much climbing in Missouri at the time, they were meeting at Sam's Throw, and those are the Arkansas guys, right? And there was kind of a little bit of a rivalry going on. I don't know how much of a true rivalry it was, but typically the Missouri climbers liked trad climbing more, a little more ethically old school. And typically the Arkansas climbers, though not all of them, were more trying to establish things, wanting to put bolts in and things like that. And that developed more as we go on here. But so there's this rivalry of kind of Sam's Throne versus Mount Magazine. Mount Magazine, there were sport routes getting put up. Sam's Throne, it was like no one was putting bolts in. And when you did put bolts in at Sam's Throne, it had to be ground up, whereas it's pretty dangerous, And then where at Mount Magazine, another place in Arkansas, people just put them in on rappel, which makes more sense. This trad sport dilemma is probably best seen here in 1986. Scarlet Begonias, potentially Arkansas's first sport route, which I recently just found out that there was a route bolted in 1979. I don't know if it had been FA'd. But for the sake of this presentation, we're going to call Scarlet Begonias Arkansas's first sport route. That got done by a guy named Mike Downing, and if you have the second edition of Rock Climbing Arkansas or the Western Crags, the new one just came out, that essay is also in there, but Mike wrote an essay about his experience, and Mike's from Colorado. He had traveled around a bunch at that time, and people were bolting routes, like he'd spent all his time in Europe. People were bolting routes on rappel, just thought it was no big deal, just moved there, bolted a couple routes, amazing routes, Scarlet Begonias and Mirage de Sade, and both of those are still classic, but he just bolted them, and people from Arkansas were like, oh, cool, sport routes, this is great. And then a year later, this guy, Billy Biswanger on the right here, which is his hilarious picture I'm going to talk more about here in a second, put in one bolt at Sam's Throne, the very first one in the region, ground up. So he went all the way up there, hung on a hook or hung on some piece of gear, put one bolt in, and the world ended for Sam's Throne. People were really upset. The funny part is this is probably Billy in his 40s at this point, and he's actually now a medical doctor. This is when he went to medical school. He stopped being a dirtbag rock climber and went to medical school in his 40s, which is a pretty funny story. But if you know Billy, he's just he's a funny guy. So it's funny to see him in his outfit here, in his disguise as a doctor. But they were just young kids, and they had come back from a trip to Colorado where there was a bunch of bolts everywhere, and they all kind of just wanted to piss people off, and so they just put this bolt in and saw what happens. And anyways, it stayed. It's still a route. It's a pretty good route, and it's just a funny story. So just the difference at Mount Magazine, fully bolted sport route on rappel, no one cared, and then kind of the more Missouri traditional contingent at Sam's Throne, one bolt gets put in a year later, and it was a huge deal. So kind of funny there. That controversy kind of continued, and even at Sam's Throne, somewhat today, it's still there. People don't really want you to rappel bolt and things like that. Those things are kind of happening there, and it's chilled out over time. But mostly now, as you all know, sport climbing is sort of where most of the development, how it happens in Arkansas. So in the 1990s, you start to see areas like Cave Creek. Early 90s, that might have been 89. But Cave Creek is an area by Sam's Throne where they allowed rappel bolting. So even just right by Sam's Throne, they started just kind of opening up the ethics a little bit. Probably the most notable thing of the 90s is Lick Hollow was purchased by the Johnson family. That's now Horseshoe Canyon Ranch. So when that was purchased, they had no intention of that being a climbing area. It just happened to be that they owned a bunch of cliff. Ironically, they could have bought, if they'd have known climbing was going to be as big of a deal for them as it was, they would have bought a lot more. There's a lot more cliff line there. If you guys have walked to the edge of the fence and looked, there was a lot more of that was for sale for not very expensive at the time. And I think they wish they would have bought it. But anyhow, that became the ranch. In 1999, the first official route at the ranch happened. This guy, Todd Miller, who's an Arkansas climber who now lives in Colorado, just went down there and asked them, was like, hey, can I bolt a route here? And they're, sure. So he bolted a route called Rosie's Cantina. It's a pretty good route on the east side of the ranch. There were routes prior to this at Horseshoe, Lick Hollow. People were hopping the fence on both sides. There's an area called Busby, an area called Low Gap that people were allowed to climb at those times that were kind of private areas. And they would hop the fence and climb cracks and stuff. We don't really have a history on when those were done, but WMA, certainly the things closest to the fence lines, if they were obvious cracks, probably got climbed in the 90s before Horseshoe Canyon was officially a thing. Okay, big deal in 2001, 2002 is when Chad Watkins, who's one of the most prolific route developers in Arkansas, put up a bunch of routes at Horseshoe because he was hired to do so. So Chad was kind of classic dirtbag rock climber, got his dream job of working at the ranch and just freaking put sport routes in one after the other. And that kind of killed the controversy in Arkansas for the most part of should we do traditional climbs or sport climbs, because Chad he was getting paid to do it. It's private property. No one could tell him what to do. And that kind of solidified that as an acceptable practice in Arkansas. So that's kind of a shift in the way that generally things were happening in Arkansas. In the early and mid 2000s, you see Cal. If you guys have been to Cal, was starting to pop up. Like places like Invasion and stuff starting to get sport routes. So that was happening about the same time. And then you start to see sort of this new area, and a lot of this was Chad. Sport areas like Candy Mountain, which had a few trad routes and a few bolts here and there, but Chad went in and like turned that into Candy Mountain. Dardanelle Rock, about that same time, was starting to get a bunch of new sport routes. Jason Cook and Stark Linger bolting those. Funny thing about Dardanelle Rock, though, is actually like the oldest crag, probably one of the oldest crags in Arkansas. There's just like no history, like no one knows anything. Everybody I've talked to is like, yeah, we climbed there. I don't remember what we climbed, but if you go, we're going to get to all the new stuff at Dardanelle Rock here. But if you go climb around the new stuff at Dardanelle Rock, there are pins everywhere, pitons, old rusty pitons that are like, I mean, they're really cool. It's cool. They're like these old relics in Arkansas. So, and you don't find that in many areas in Arkansas. So who knows? It's funny now because I think of Dardanelle Rock as an amazing rock climbing area. And you talk to the old school guys, and they're like, we just use it as training for Mount Magazine. I'm like, I think it's better than Mount Magazine. I don't know. So they didn't even like write it up. They didn't do anything about it. But anyways, okay, so 2010 till present. This is like when everything exploded, right? So it's a kind of, when I started, that first guidebook that I had came out in 2009. So this is kind of like that time on, the routes have exploded. It's over 100 routes a year we're seeing on public property, and as many of you probably know, there's a lot of private property that's been developed since then that not everybody can go to. So who knows, that route count may be more like 2,000 or something, or 2,500. I don't know exactly, but a lot going on. So, and the future is very bright. There's a lot of areas that are like we're almost able to go in the guidebook because of access issues or because of developers weren't like really ready to release it yet, but so there's a lot going on that even like these guidebooks are basically already outdated, which is a cool thing for us as climbers because we know there's more coming. Okay, so the evolution of Arkansas climbing guidebooks. So basically, I told you we started with this, and now we actually have color pictures and what we see as a modern guidebook. And so we're going to talk a little bit about how that happened. The people who came before me, this is the book, 1984, Radical Changes, Mount Magazine, a climbing guide. A guy named Kevin Short, who I've never gotten to talk to. I'd love to. Kevin, if you're watching on live stream, DM me, bro. So that was the first one, and I want to talk about that. And there's been a lot of guidebooks written in Arkansas. Now, if anybody's interested in this, I have all of my entire library back there. So just be gentle, but you can check them all out. And I don't need to talk about all of them here because we don't have that much time, but Kevin Short's book, it stands out to me as something really important because it's the first thing that we had. And then Clay Frisbee, who many of you may know, a Springfield climber, part of the Missouri contingent, whatever, has been around Arkansas for a long time, has written 4 books for Arkansas, and I have all 4 of them back there. One in 1990, and then his latest one was actually a Horseshoe Canyon book in 2014. But wonderful guy. I showed this picture of Clay. That's the same Piney Bowl River crossing there, and that's the last time I climbed with Clay, and I think that was he thought that was hilarious. We were like, because he's kind of a short guy, and we're like, all right, we're going to this place, it's awesome. And he's like, we're doing what? We're like going across this river. Like, okay, bring some shorts and some sandals. It was November, but he's a good sport, and I really have a lot of respect for him because when I started writing guidebooks, I was just like this 21-year-old kid coming back from Arkansas, and he was the guy who was writing guidebooks, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to write guidebooks. And he totally could have written me off and been a jerk, and he's been nothing but a good friend and supportive, and so I have a lot of respect for him. He's a great guy, great climber too. Okay, so how I got into writing guidebooks. I climbed in Arkansas for a few years, or a couple years, then moved to Colorado, and trad climbed a bunch, and toured around, went to all these different areas, and about that time, this is the first color guidebook in the United States. Indian Creek guidebook. It's nothing special nowadays, but when this came out, it was a big deal because the only color guidebooks were for Europe, as far as I know at that time. In Arkansas at the time, as if you go look through my guidebooks, it was all like hand-drawn topos, and black and white photos and stuff like that. So it was really old format. And so when I moved back to Arkansas, I thought, maybe we should do this for Arkansas. And at the same time, I had a really good friend and mentor of mine who was starting to write the El Dorado Canyon guidebook in Colorado, and he kind of pushed me to do it. And because I didn't have a real job at the time and, wasn't married or anything, I just kind of like spent every day doing it. And it would be really hard to do that now. Like with where I'm at in my life now, I could not just write that first guidebook like I did then. So just like 18 months climbing 3 to 5 days a week and writing the other days. And yeah. So anyways, that's what all kind of spawned this guidebook, or the first guidebook, which was, I have a copy of it back there, released in 2009. This is the whole series of books that have come out from that I've authored over the years. And a lot of those are still out, so you guys probably know what those are. Okay, so the new stuff, which is what all we're here for tonight. This Western Crags book was released in February. So basically the rock climbing Arkansas became so big that it had to be split into two routes. And this was kind of a last minute decision. Like as of this time last year, I was still trying to finish both books as one. And then we looked at it, it was going to be over 800 pages. And it was like, people were already mad at me for like carrying around areas that they don't ever go to. You know, they're like, why is this book so big? So we split it into two. And honestly, I don't know how it's going to look in the future, but there's just so much climbing now that it's having to get broken up. Over 1,500 routes in this book, and the way the Western Crags versus the Eastern Crags is split up is Highway 7. So it's not a true east-west. There's not much climbing in East Arkansas, right? But Highway 7 divides it almost evenly. So even if you're in this part of Arkansas, you'll want the Eastern Crags book because some of them are like 5 minutes from the Western Crags. Does that make sense? So that's how it's split up. We're going to go over these individually here, but there's a bunch of new routes, a bunch of new areas, and we're going to go through some here. So Fitzgerald, if you all haven't been there, this is a photo by Joe Kopek, a.k.a. Joe Peck, that he took of Drew Stagner here. This is at Fitzgerald. So this is our Springdale Crags. This is a wonderful climbing area, really good in the 510 to 512 range. It's not as good as perhaps the stuff out in Newton County and farther east, but an awesome local crag that I wish we would have had this when I was learning how to climb, because I would have gone there a lot. So there are easier routes there, but really good in that 510 to 512 range. Which, in contrast, Weber's Mountain, which is like the sister crag to that, is really better in the 510 and under range. So this is, 5 minutes from Fitzgerald, you kind of get the whole other spectrum. So it's kind of nice. It kind of hopefully breaks everybody up. But it's a wonderful crag as well, and that just got finished bolting, I think, like the end of last summer was when that stopped. So Hunt Hollow, some of you have probably been there. That was on Mountain Project for a while, so that was kind of one of the new crags people knew about. This is Trenton Moon, a good friend of mine that developed a lot of that stuff at Hunt Hollow. Also, Yuli Garcia bolted a bunch of that stuff, but a great all-around area. So it's pretty cool. There's a 5.6 there, and there's a 14C there. So the hardest route in Arkansas and some of the easiest routes in Arkansas and everything in between. Really, really great area. That 14C is this in the background. And that one has sharp holds on it. I said Arkansas doesn't have sharp holds. Okay, so this is the homestead. This is a picture of me that a guy, Levi Harrell, took, a guy from Springfield who actually has both cover shots on my guidebook. So he's an incredible photographer and become a friend. So it's been cool to showcase his work for Arkansas. See, Arkansas and Missouri can be friends. So anyways, the homestead is pretty close to here. It's like an hour away driving, but it's quite a hike. It's like half an hour hike. It's going to be more of an area. This is a project still. No one's done it. It's going to be more in the harder ranges. I think we'll probably see a handful of really good 513s and 514s there, which is pretty cool for Arkansas to have that. Piney Bowl, this is the epic river crossing. This is what it gets you. So it's a really neat area. This doesn't really show off Piney Bowl in its entirety because there's all these walls. It's really like a vert. It's not as steep as it looks there. It's really more like a vert to slightly overhanging. Mostly 512s there, but beautiful. There are a handful of things like 5.8 to 5.11. And it's called Piney Bowl because this is the Piney Bowl waterfall here, which is this. So this is a friend of mine, Justin Shong, climbing last fall. That's a 512 called Taste the Rainbow. Ode Hollow, also one of the best new areas. Yeah, I need to say that. Piney Bowl is one of the best areas in Arkansas, and if you're climbing those grades, you need to go there and check it out. It's amazing. And Ode Hollow here, this is another one in the region. Both of these are in the Big Piney region, so kind of that Arkansas experience you're getting. But Ode Hollow, this is, you can see that rock in the background. This is that picture I showed you earlier. Some of the prettiest rock in Arkansas and some of the best rock climbing. This 11A here, Effervescent, is maybe the best 11A in Arkansas. One of the best 511s in Arkansas. Shout out to Chase, wherever he is. That's his route, his FA. Pat him on the back, unless one of the bolts falls out. Then I'm just kidding. He did a great job bolting it, and everything there is wonderful. Okay, Dardanelle Rock. And to this, so this Arkansas experience for this place, this has a river crossing and a 30-minute hike. So some people are like, I don't like Ode, it has a hike. I'm like, well, that's kind of why I like it. 45 unless you're sandbagging. Okay, so Dardanelle Rock. I put this in here. A lot of people know what Dardanelle Rock is, but I think in the last book it had like 39 routes and now has 86 or something. So it has exploded there, mostly due to a climber, Stark Ligon, out of Little Rock. He's bolted all sorts of stuff. So it used to be, a 511 and 512 climbing area, predominantly, with a handful of things here and there. And now it is all grades. So no matter what grade you climb, you should go there. It's fantastic. And this is the place I was talking about. Has all the pins. You'll see all these old pins. It's really cool. But most notably about Dardanelle Rock is there's a bunch of multi-pitch climbing there now. And so in this picture, it's hard to see probably, this little guy right here, this is Andrew Childs, local Fayetteville climber. And then somewhere there's a belayer, Scott Devlin. I can't see him, but this route is a 4-pitch route. So pitch 1 anchors here, it climbs this whole angles this slab. And then it takes this, there's this pitch up here called the sidewalk, you can see plants growing on it now, that's like 5'6". And then you can top it out here and it's 5'6", or go this way and it's 5'10", but it's like exposed, awesome, it's amazing. And there's another route that kind of, there's probably 7 or 8 multi-pitch routes there, and there's a 5'5" that starts here and then joins that is, I mean, you just take like your parents on, take anybody who's never rock climbed and just go blow their mind. It's a true summit up there. It's like in Arkansas, we don't have a true summit very often. So really, really special, all the work that they've done down there. Okay, the next one, the Eastern Crags. Like I said, September, fall, right? Where hopefully, guidebooks can have a mind of their own of when they like to come out. But this one was supposed to come out like in December of 2023 or something. So we're running a little behind. But we're really close to sending this one to the printer, and this is going to be everything east of Highway 7, about the same route breakup in terms of about 1,500 routes and a bunch of new stuff there. Less new areas there, total new areas, but equally number of cool routes. So this one's on Mountain Project, if you guys want to look this one up in the meantime. This is maybe the best 12A in Cal. This is called The Leftovers. A guy from Kansas City bolted it. This is my friend Justin from Colorado. And that's at a place called Fern Gully. This is an area in Cal that we don't know if it's going to make the guidebook or not yet, but this is Bradley Dishman, who has the best hair in Arkansas. We're showing that off here. But anyways, this is a wall that's still under development, hence like all the ropes and stuff everywhere. So we don't know if this is going to make the guidebook or not, but it will at some point. We're hoping. There's some access issues, but just to give you a taste of some things to come here, this is a project that he bolted. So you get a good view of the whole wall and stuff there, and it's going to be a really special wall when it hopefully all gets opened up and all the routes get bolted and stuff like that. So shout out to Yuli for making that video for us. Yuli also, with Chase and Aaron Mady, bolted a lot of that stuff, and a few others bolted a lot of that stuff at Ode Hollow. So been doing some good work for us, Arkansas climbers. If I can figure out. Okay, Sam's Throne. We all know about this place. So this is going to be one of the hardest routes in Arkansas when it gets done. This is Spencer Schmick, who's kind of our local prodigy. He said that's probably going to be a 14B. So this is right next to Dreadlock Rasta. Has not been done yet, but that'll be one of our harder routes. Jamestown. So I talked about Jamestown earlier. Jamestown does not get the credit that it deserves. There's now like 130 routes there. It's literally like a North 40 in eastern Arkansas, except that I would say there's probably better, harder routes there, but really, really good in like 5'8" to 5'10". It's just and great camping. It's a privately owned crag that there's three brothers that refer to themselves as the Nomads that bought that place to save it. It was going to get closed, and they've just done a great job with it, like great signage and great camping, and there's a cool competition they do over there called the King of the Crags every year. But go support them. They're doing awesome stuff. And sometimes I feel like because it's 3 hours away, people will never go there. But it's a fantastic crag. Like, yeah, everybody should be going there. So this is a route called Pagan on a Sunday. And this is the first route bolted there. Mark Mobley, who bolted all these things, was just to go into a little more history of Arkansas. He was probably bolting in the mid-2000s, but he basically established this place single-handedly and like put this place on the map. And now, because of what he did, and then the Nomads able to buy it, this climbing has grown over there, and now there's like all these other areas that Mark developed in the early 2000s and stuff that are now getting bought and opened up, and the nomads are trying to acquire more land. There's a multi-pitch limestone area over there. Like it really wouldn't shock me in 10 years if it were like Batesville were the best place to live as a climber in Arkansas in terms of proximity, like 20 minutes from town. So right, it's a little farther. It's a little farther from the maybe perhaps the best stuff in Arkansas. But within 20 or 30 minutes, there's going to be hundreds of routes that are accessible for people, I think, in the next 10 years. So, and limestone, which is really cool. Okay, Rattlesnake Ridge. This is part of the Little Rock Crags that I was talking about, which will, in the guidebook, this will be called the Eastern Ouachitas. If you haven't been to Rattlesnake Ridge yet, it's literally 10 minutes from Little Rock. It's really, really, really good sandstone. You can see it's kind of more fractured. That Ouachita sandstone is a little more fractured than the sandstone that we're used to up here, but incredible rock climbing. It's more in the range of like 5'7" to 5'9". There's 2 crags there. Nolan Creek, this one here, that's more, it's like 50 routes, or maybe not 50, 40-something routes in a row, something like that, of 5'7" to 5'9", and they're all really good. It's not like they all stand out or anything, but if you wanted to go get a bunch of pitches in, it's a really awesome place to have that in Little Rock. This, and this is, we're going to get into it back to history a little bit, this is a route called Local Legend. Does anybody know who Jeff Lowe is? Chase? Okay, somebody's got to know. I can't be that old. Jeff Lowe is a really famous rock climber and mountaineer. I think from Colorado maybe, but so he climbed out west a bunch and has a bunch of first ascents in Arkansas. And apparently, this is where my history might be wrong, bolted this, Local Legend, it's a 12A, in 1979. But I don't think he sent it. I'm about to try to organize all this stuff, but first of all, to have Jeff Lowe ever come to Arkansas to put up a route is a total treat. I mean, that's just historically, it's really cool and really important, especially at the time. Like, he would have been one of the top climbers of his time, especially in the mountains. And then, like, somehow, if it took, I think in 1988 is when we think the FA was. I'm about to try to figure all this out. But anyways, go there, and historically, this route is so important. Go do it if you climb that grade. And it's actually amazing, too. He fully went there and picked the best line and bolted it. And it's probably a 4-star 12A, so. And I don't know who this climber is. Jonathan Child's pictures, but I don't know who this climber is. So we'll have to get that figured out before it goes in the book. Okay. Questions? Judith?
So I've heard, people talk and have been in conversations where we kind of talk about the effect of opening a gym on the community or building community. Have you given any thought in all of your guidebook releases of the effect you think publishing a guidebook has?
Yeah, I'll repeat that for the live stream, or if anybody couldn't hear it. She said that there's an obvious effect, correct me if I'm wrong here, there's an obvious effect of when you open a climbing gym and like what it does to like basically the travel, the use of the new areas and things like that. And like, have I thought about that effect on like what a guidebook does to areas in the future? And I have thought about it a lot, actually. And it's really funny because most places that I've been to, people don't want anybody to go anywhere because there's too many people. And here I'm like begging people to like walk on our trails. And that probably will turn, maybe not in our lifetimes, but maybe in 100 years, maybe I'm ruining it. I'm just kidding. But yeah, so I have thought about it a lot, and I don't know the answer to that. And I mean, you've walked around in a lot of these cool areas. We need people to walk on them to some degree, but too much use is bad. We see it on the Buffalo River all the time now. If any of you guys floated the Buffalo before, and then now, I mean, it's going to have to there's too many people. So it is a real concern. But as of now, I'm more like gung-ho with it, and maybe like in 20 years, I'll be like trying to close all the crags and not tell anybody where anything is. I don't know, but that's what they do everywhere else in the South. But it's a good question.
I think more in terms of developing the community.
Meaning, like, does it help develop the community?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. So that's different. I don't know that I've thought about that much, but I mean, she's saying like, how does guidebooks and how it develops the community? I mean, I think that it's got to help. I would think that's not really been my primary focus, but it's obviously like an organic product of it, I think. I don't know. I'd be interested to hear anybody else's opinions on that, but I've just like always written guidebooks. I just like the history, and I like climbing a bunch, and I know that I like good information. When I go areas and the guidebook's not very good, it makes me unhappy, So I'm like, well, I just easily could fix this. I'm like all grumpy about it. But yeah, I think it's probably good for the community, and I think it's great to get more people out rock climbing to a degree, for sure. What else, guys? you got?
Have you put any thought behind maybe developing a new bouldering guidebook?
Yeah, he asked if I put any thought in developing a new bouldering guidebook. It's in the works, man. They're all in the works. It'll be out next year or the year after. Yeah, so the bouldering guidebook, it's really funny. So I'm not as much of a boulder, and if anybody knows anybody who wants to help me with that project, I would love to have some help. Okay, we got some people maybe interested. The bouldering guidebook would have already been done if boulders were buying guidebooks. So I really, like when that book came out, because people for a long time were like, oh my God, we got to do this bouldering guidebook. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to like boulder for a couple seasons here. I'm going to do my best to write this book. And we wrote this book, and it was just like, people were like, I think they just stole it from their friends or something. I don't know. But we only printed 3,000, and that book came out in 2018. I still have like 700 left. So it's definitely in the works. I've kept track of certain things, and that's the next one that's like technically on the agenda. And I do want to keep going with it. There's so much cool stuff that's happening in Arkansas bouldering, and I've tried to keep up with some of it. I haven't seen all of it, but it's just really cool. It's blowing up. And I will tell you, writing the bouldering guidebook is a totally different animal because it is like, it's harder to reach the boulders oftentimes. It's harder they get grown up more often. There's like, problems get re-FA'd like every 2 years. We're like, oh my God, I found this new area and sent it to me. I'm like, that was done in like 2003, because things grow back over. There's no bolt there to tell you somebody did it before. So it's a different animal. But yes, I have all the intentions of working with somebody or trying to finish it and doing my best myself with that. But bouldering's hard though. It's hard on you too. What else? What you got?
Thinking about like the Jim to Crag pipeline.
Yeah.
And thinking about access issues like the zoo over in the Red River was closed recently just due to irresponsibleness, I guess. What are your thoughts just around that Jim to Crag pipeline and how to insert like responsibility into that? Obviously, it's not on you as like the guidebook protector.
Sure.
And maybe Andrew has some thoughts with the Climate Coalition. I know they do some stuff as well, but what are your thoughts around some of that?
Like, what are my thoughts on the Jim to Crag pipeline and how we could do it more responsibly?
And maybe it's like community driven out of it.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like that's a hard thing because when I started to get into rock climbing 20 years ago, the people who wanted to get into rock climbing really wanted to be into rock climbing, right? You had sort of like this, there was a barrier that made it a lot harder to get into. And I feel like that sort of just produced people that were more respectable of being outside. And now, like with the comp scene, the gym scene, it's definitely a little different. I don't really know the answer to that, but I think we've kind of gotten a new demographic, and it seems like some of that responsibility should be on the gym, but it's also not. I don't know. I don't have a great. Do you want to follow up to that?
I'm going to extend off this question.
Yeah.
Do you think that guidebook authors have a responsibility to speak a little bit to the ethics of the area? Like the Moab guidebook or the Indian Creek guidebook, I know has actually, I think, a picture of Chase using a wag bag in a really tasteful way.
That's awesome. I didn't know that, Chase. It's famous.
But, to kind of say, hey, in this area, we use wag bags because it's really dry and nothing breaks down.
For sure. So her follow-up question was, do you think it's the responsibility of a guidebook author to like talk about the ethics of an area specifically when it comes to things like wag bags or things like that? Yeah, of course. Yeah. And ethics to the historical ethics as well. I mean, yep. What you got?
What's your favorite crag in Arkansas?
Oh gosh. Favorite? I don't know. This is hard for my brain. I have too many thoughts in my brain. Like if I had to climb one place for the rest of my life, probably Rock Creek, maybe Candy Mountain. Those would be the two. Well, yeah, I don't know. Maybe Piney Bowl. I don't know. There's a bunch of yeah. So as far as the guidebooks, it would probably be either Rock Creek or what's in a guidebook, like we're all allowed to go to. It'd probably be Rock Creek or Candy Mountain, and that's basic. I think those are the best two crags in Arkansas in terms of like they have everything. Like they have easy routes, and like if you guys have looked at the guidebook, the new guidebook, Rock Creek has 110 routes now, and there's plenty more for easier routes and things that are going to continue happening in the future. But they're the only two areas I think that have like really classic routes from easy to hard. And so like as we age and climb easier routes or whatever, I like to climb easier routes too. So I don't always like to just try to push myself. And so those places have all the whole grade range at a classic. That'd probably be one of those two. Get it down to 2 for you. What you got?
A two-parter, Wes Frank. What's, as someone who's beginning in this, what are some skill sets that you would advise to hone in on to get as close to perfect as you can get as you progress in this? And the second one is, what are the things that beginners should avoid doing at the beginning?
So like you mean by skill sets, you mean like safety skill sets, or do you mean by like how to just improve at climbing?
I guess just improve the climbing.
I'll rephrase these, or I'll say these questions back so people can hear. I'm just asking like, what's a good skill set for like beginners to work on to try to improve as a climber? And what was the second part?
Things to avoid, like, oh, you gotta buy this or do this.
Just like
Just
common
general
pitfalls.
advice. Yeah.
Yeah, so like things to avoid as you're starting climbing. That's a good question. The skill set for sure, I would say that, in my opinion, and maybe because I don't have much strength, because I'm just a skinny guy, but I think climbing is much more of a skill sport than a strength sport. And so I get really annoyed by how much people train and don't practice. And so like everybody, like I know a lot of people who like they've been climbing for like a year and they're like hangboarding and like blowing their fingers out, and you like watch them, they can't even like move on the rock. And I'm like, to me, people should be practicing more than they are, especially when you're learning more than you're training. So I think does that make sense? Like, and being like specific with your feet and being intentional, you know, like when you put your foot on a hole, why are you putting it there? Like feel it. Are you backstepping? Are you heel hooking? Like, I don't know. So that would probably be my like focus on the skill part of it and practice it a lot would be. So like there's no, you can go watch a lot of people that are really strong in the gym and go outside and like have no fluency on the rock. And there's no real replacement, in my opinion, for like miles and miles and miles of rock climbing. So I think that just getting out and trying different things and different, you know, like crack climb and face climb and do overhanging routes and attack your weaknesses, but focus more on the skill than the strength. Common pitfalls, or like things to avoid. I don't know. I mean, I think a lot of times when people are taught belaying, is they aren't taught how to give a soft catch, and you see people get spiked into the wall would probably be my number one. Like, there's a lot of really safe belayers that are learning how to climb at the gym, but then the idea of like the soft catch, have you been taught that? So like when someone, if there's no ledge for a climber to hit, like if they're just gonna fall into space, when they fall or just fall gently, as they fall, and the rope comes tight on you as the belayer, you should jump a little bit, and that will just soften it. So you'll see a lot of times like if someone, and if there's a ledge, you've gotta like keep it tight as possible. But you see, like, beginner climbers nervous and just holding down too tight, and people just come back and get spiked and break an ankle or something, or that's probably. And I remember that as a beginner, you're like right above your bolt, and you're scared because you haven't been up there before, and you know, and you're like, oh, just keep me really tight, like take above the bolt. And you're like, don't take above the bolt, like jump off and have them jump, and so that's probably my biggest thing that I see. Yeah. Hope those are helpful. Chase.
You mentioned Jeff Lowe putting up that route at Rattlesnake Ridge, and I know Todd Skinner put up a route at Come Out Magazine, and like Chris Sharma putting up Paying the Rent. Are there any other like notable, I guess fame is kind of a spectrum or relative, but are there any other like notable ascents in Arkansas from famous climbers?
Well, Todd Skinner put up another route at Red Rock Point, or I should say started to put up a route there, a famous route that is now, I guess, finished. I don't know. I have to think about that one. Not off the top of my head. Like, I'd forgotten that Chris Sharma even did Paying the Rent, but he didn't bolt that one, but there's a funny story behind that one. I mean, obviously a lot of boulder problems that have been done by famous, like basically all of our hardest boulder problems, I think, have been done by out-of-state climbers. Anybody else have any, I feel like I'm forgetting something. Does anybody else know famous climbers from Arkansas that came in? No?
It isn't pretty famous.
Well, I said boulder problems. Call me out.
Matt Siegel came and sent one of you.
Oh, there you go. There you go. That's the newest one, yeah. So the question was, anybody didn't hear it, what famous climbers from out of state have come here and put established routes? And he mentioned a few climbers, but I couldn't think of any other ones. Andrew, what was?
John Gill, right? or John Sherman.
John Sherman put up, yeah, the guy who
Somewhere down
started,
in Cave Creek.
that's right, the guy who started bouldering, the bouldering V scale. John Sherman put up a couple boulder problems at Cave Creek apparently, but in the early 90s, and I can't imagine what like those roads were like then. When I started climbing, Highway 123 was a dirt road, and I can't imagine like how do you even get to Cave Creek in 1990 or whatever, I don't know. What was your question though, Andrew?
Oh, I was going to ask, what are your top 3 must-do routes in Arkansas?
Oh, gosh.
Any grade, just like top 3.
Any grade? I'd have to go by grade.
Well, I mean, then that's like 50.
Pick one grade. I'll tell you my favorite route.
11A.
Probably effervescent. Probably effervescent. Just throwing me softballs for your husband's awesome routes. I could give you I don't know. He said, what's your top 3 favorite, like most I would recommend or favorite?
Recommend, top 3 you'd recommend. Like someone's a 5'11" leader coming to Arkansas. What 3 routes should they get on of any grade?
Of any grade, 5'11" or easier. So if someone's coming to Arkansas, top 3 routes, 5'11" or easier, what would I tell them to get on? That's hard right off the top of my head. I'd probably say, like, just not to leave them all at 5'11". I'd probably say to get them a taste of, like, steep jug bashing that is Arkansas, I'd probably say learning to fly at the ranch, 10C. You're putting me on the spot here. I'm going to have a better answer for this, like, in 2 hours when I think about it more, but I'd probably have them go do something at Candy Mountain. I think all that really neat honeycomb rock is cool there. There's a bunch of 5'11s at Candy Mountain now. There's awesome 5'10 there. I'm totally rambling now. There's an awesome 5'9 there, some multi-pitch 5'8s there. I'd probably send them there. Maybe that's a better way for me to answer your question. I'd probably send them to Rock Creek and to Candy Mountain and probably the ranch if they were 5'11 climbers. And there's so many good things at those. And, the ranch, in my opinion, once you get above 5'10, there's less stuff there. But, yeah, I'd probably send a 5'11 climber there to do the classics. Yeah. I don't know who's first. Go ahead.
You listed the best 12A in Cowell. What was that climb?
The leftovers. That's debatable too. Don't hold me to it. It's really good though.
Is that sport or track?
Sport. Yeah. That's on Mountain Project. Yep. I like to list things, and this is why Andrew's question's already bothering me, because I like to think of things and have them in order, and I just wasn't prepared for that. He knows my brain too well. He knew I couldn't do that. What more? Yeah.
What's the most sandbagged route in Arkansas?
Oh gosh. I don't know if I want to admit that because it's probably my fault. He said, "What's the most sandbagged route in Arkansas?" And I will say, if anybody's been sandbagged by me, it was not intentional, which means it's not sandbagging right. But when I was younger, I really liked to make things as hard as possible. Like I get on stuff now, and I'm like, my first sentence, I'm like, I called this what? Like this is harder. I don't know. Maybe I'm just getting soft as I get older, but. The most sandbagged route in Arkansas, I don't know if I could give you a good answer for that, but I will tell you, for anybody who's done Scarlet Begonias at Mount Magazine, that's a classic sandbag. And maybe it is 10 plus, but it's like 4 bolts and 50 feet, and it's really exciting. Everybody should do that route. It's dangerous, but not dangerous. It shouldn't be dangerous, right? It's intimidating, historically really important. The climbing's pretty cool. It's like, it gets stars because of how historically important it is, and and there's a lot of sandbagged routes at Mount Magazine. Chase and Judith, they love Mount Magazine. They could probably give you some good answers on sandbag, top 10 sandbag lists. Yeah.
This might also mess with the list part of your
Oh,
brain.
gosh.
But, regardless of grade, what do you think is the best route of each style? Like angle, slab, vert, and overhang.
What's the best route of each style? Slab, vert, and overhang. True slab?
True slab.
So the 2 slabs that come to my mind are probably that one at Candy Mountain. Wizards and Glass is great, 11A. That to me is more like kind of like true slab. But my favorite slab route is, I'm going to shameless plug myself, is Heart of Darkness, which I know you have done. That's a 12A at Valley of the Blind. It's not like true slab climbing, but it's low angle. And then a vertical, you said? So.
Also might be the biggest sandbag.
Oh, that could be a big sandbag. There you go. I'll argue that one. It might be 12B. But it wouldn't be as cool if it were 12B. So, and then a vert?
Yeah.
Either something at Oat or Piney Bowl. Those are the 2 best vert areas. I mean, like, maybe like Possum Palace or Maybe that's the first one that comes to mind. One of those areas would have it, yeah. Possum Palace, for anybody wondering, is somewhere. Maybe not. There it is. That's Possum Palace, 12B. Like, really awesome vert route. And what was and then overhang? Yeah. Like how overhanging? Roof?
Yeah, do two. Do slight overhang and severely overhanging.
So severely overhanging would be something at Candy Mountain out the roof, probably Lil Sky. I think that's the best of those roofs, or maybe Big Sky. You don't get those kind of roofs that often. Slightly overhanging, I don't know. That's like 3/4 of Arkansas, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe something at Prohibition. Is that too steep? That's pretty steep. Someone say check that. Someone 6 now. Maybe like 100 proof at Prohibition. That's pretty steep though. I don't know. That one's too hard. I'd pass on that one. What else? Oh, he's just tearing me up with these lists.
I don't know if this will help. You talked a lot about how climbing has developed in the state, like over the last 10 years, and what you hope to happen in the future. What do you see as the hurdles for climbing development in the near future? And are there any specific things that you think would help it develop?
Hurdles for the future of Arkansas and climbing. Honestly, there's less hurdles now than I've ever experienced. Andrew probably has better answers to that than me. I would say a lot of things are happening in Arkansas, but they're moving slow. So we need to be patient. As far as the government, working with state parks and what the Waltons are doing. These things aren't moving super fast. So I'd say we just need to be patient. But more so than anything, standard things. We need to try to be respectful of following some sort of rules and make sure we're not getting areas closed and things like that, and doing our best with that. But I don't have any nothing. Andrew, do you have anything to add to that, specifically?
I don't know. I think part of it's going to come down to how many people start going climbing. You touched on Buffalo River and overuse and more visitors, and it's the more people that go to a place, the harder it becomes to manage.
Yeah.
So I think it's really being aware of where you are and who owns it, and what the expectations are from the land manager.
Yeah.
And if you can, follow whatever basic rules they put in place, then I don't think there's going to be any hurdles. But
yeah.
I think at a certain point we're probably going to see more management plans for climbing.
Yeah, so we got to be nice to these people that make management plans.
Yeah.
I'll take one more question, and then I'm gonna let Andrew talk about the Climbers Coalition for a second. And then if anybody wants to buy a guidebook or look through my guidebooks or have a book signed or something, I'll be hanging out back there. But any other questions?
I got
One more?
Real fast.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
We've talked a couple times about Red Rock Point.
Yeah.
I've heard a lot of rumors about that place.
Yeah.
I know access is a little weird there. What's going on there? What happened?
Red Rock Point, he's asking me about access at Red Rock Point, which is a really famous climbing area. I actually looked. A friend of mine who's passed away now, old school rock climber in Arkansas, has a bunch of amazing pictures of Red Rock Point from the late 70s, and I have them somewhere and I can't find them. But that's a side tangent there. So access to Red Rock Point is a private area. It was totally open at one point to where you could drive in on top. They let people drive through. This is before my time, but you could drive through the gate on top and just park up there and then wrap in. And then climbers left you got to respect your landowners that Andrew was talking about. So climbers apparently left the gate open and the cows got out. And since then they've just been no. There are other ways people have gotten in there, but there's no good access. It's not, it's you're risking, anybody that's going there is risking a run-in with the landowner. Yep. Okay, Andrew, you want to talk about the anything y'all have going on? Yeah. You want to stay in here so we can hear it up there? Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Cole. So my name is Andrew Bland. I'm the vice president of the Arkansas Climbers Coalition. I've been an Arkansas climber for the last 20 years. I started climbing in Kansas in high school and shortly came down here and then moved down here and haven't left. So the Arkansas Climbers Coalition, we're a 501c nonprofit with a mission to preserve and protect climbing areas in Arkansas. And our work, we kind of work on access issues like we were just talking about with private landowners. We do community-based events and education, and we have some Jim DeCrag programs that we're kind of constantly doing at different locations around the state. We have our Arkansas Climbers Festival coming up at the end of March at Horseshoe Canyon Ranch, and that's a really great opportunity for really anyone to come out and like just learn more about climbing. It's really tailored to like newer climbers and people that want to learn more about climbing. So we have, you know, climbers that have been really experienced from across the region that come out and they teach clinics and workshops, and you can really come out there and learn a lot more. I mean, as far as like the best hangboarding protocol or like how to project your new route. We've got classes on like how to take kids climbing and just different things like that. It's a great kind of community event. You can meet a lot of new climbers. You should definitely check it out on our website at arkansasclimbers.org. It's the last weekend in March. So kind of talking about access, which is where like my passion in addition to just like climbing lies. You know, we work with a lot of land managers, Forest Service, the state, private landowners, Park Service, kind of anyone that has, you know, climbing on their property. We try and work with them on their management plans or on easements or kind of, you know, we kind of identified Fitzgerald as like a prime area for climbing, and we got connected with the right people and we were able to turn that into a crag. So we're always kind of out there looking to advocate for climbers and just increase access to climbing, and then, you know, grow the community by growing the amount of climbing that we have available. You can join and become a member, and that kind of gives you a little more insight into what we have going on. Right now, our biggest project we're working on is Big Rock Quarry in North Little Rock. Cole kind of mentioned that. There's a part of Burns Park kind of on the down river side of that. It's got some really nice tall, like 50 to 80 foot tall bluffs, and we've entered into an MOU with the city of North Little Rock. We're currently working on trails and developing routes. I think we've got like 15 that are bolted at this point. It's not open to climbing yet, but we've got 3 to 4 different areas that we're going to be opening up. So you can kind of like follow along with that process. We're fundraising for hardware and kind of just everything we need to turn that into a new urban climbing area. So I could go on all day, but I'll be hanging out back there with Cole. So if you want to come and talk about like climbing access and Climbers Coalition and what we do, come and find me. I'll be hanging out for a while. Oh, yeah. I think it's $35, and you get a T-shirt. So pretty cheap, considering everything that you get out of it. You know, like if it wasn't for the Climbers Coalition, you wouldn't have Fitzgerald or Weber Mountain, and we would just be like climbing at Lincoln or driving to the ranch. So cool.
Sign up.
Online, arkansasclimbers.org, or find us in an event. Just get on our website and we'll have more details there. Send us an email. Talk to us about climbing. Yeah.